Springfield's Talk 104.1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. It's hour one. My name is Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com. Also on the KSGF app. We are on YouTube. This is easy to find, relatively speaking. You just look up Springfield's Talk 104.1, and then you can watch the show in addition to listening to this show. And we got archives up there so you can watch it live or watch some of the past episodes if you'd like. And then we do have the shows archived as well. If you miss any of it, it is in podcast form. Simply go to KSGF.com, the app, Spotify, iTunes, any of those different locations. Yesterday, there were some people that were noting, seemed like the levels were off a little bit. And then one of our account executives made the same comment. She's like, yeah, I was listening and you were quiet. And so I said, well, I'll just crank up the mic. That's what I'll be told to do anyway. But I notice even when I have it all the way up, my levels aren't quite where they probably should be.
Huh.
So anyhow.
I wonder if it's the mic itself. What do my levels look like?
Let's see. Let me crank them up now.
Check.
I mean, they seem a little, I don't know. Well, I'm just going to I'm doing all the way to the top and see if this is, if that's going to be a remedy for it. Ideally, they'd all be level. Everything would be the way it's supposed to be.
We're not allowed to have nice
We
things.
are not allowed, but that's okay. I like to think that it demonstrates that we can just work through obstacles and still be on the leading edge of information for Springfield.
On a positive note, I did get us new headphones.
You did get new headphones in studio. I mean, look at them. They're all uniform. Mm-hmm. They're not heathered. Is
Christy coming in on Thursday?
I haven't heard otherwise. So,
I know she'll be so excited.
Yeah, well, all of our weekend hosts, I'm sure, will be. I mean, we're really classing it up. Headphones at work, fully, functionally. Look at you making things happen over there.
I know.
Making things happen. A new poll just dropped in the GOP Texas Senate primary. And it's not good news for incumbent Cornyn. And I would argue it's just really not good news overall for the Republican Party because it is demonstrating, and I know this is one race and it's just Texas, but it's demonstrating that the Republican Party has given off the vibes of pre-Trump era. This lukewarm, when it really comes down to it, Democrats get their way. And what's leading this is this Real ID stuff, or the Save America Act, and the continued refusal of Thune, who is leading the Senate, to make this happen. And he's doubling down on it again. In fact, most recently he claimed that all of our concerns and the vast majority of Americans that are wanting security at the polls, that want Americans to have to prove when they register to vote that they're actually Americans, that's just all it's the internet echo chamber. It's artificial. This isn't really a thing people care about. It's like the Democrats when it comes to the open border and crime, or at least pre-Trump re-election, in which they claimed that people weren't really concerned about these things. These are just Republican talking points. It's just a bunch of chatter. And this is what John Thune is. It's becoming so absurd. It is difficult to believe that he's not being bribed, that he's not somehow, there's extort or something going on, that he can so brazenly be running counter to what the vast majority of not just Republicans want, but independent voters, and over 70% of even Democrats support this. And you have this guy that is still doubling down and refusing to make this happen. You have to start asking, what is going on here? Is he being paid off? Are there bribes at play? And there's no evidence of that other than there's no evidence of reason why he's blocking it. Zero. It certainly isn't because of political reasons. He can't, you know, argue that, well, it's just what the voters want. There aren't many issues out there that you have, and there may not be an issue out there in which you have solidly so many Americans on this one side. And his blocking of this, I mean, he is solely responsible for this not happening as leader of the Senate. This one guy, what is going on with him? Does someone have something on him? Is he taking money under the table? What could be the motivation? We just don't know. So, you know, and that being one of the leading issues domestically right now is part of the reason that I think John Cornyn is down by 8 points against Ken Paxton in the primary, according to the latest polls in Texas. Now, this is such a messy thing because on one hand, you've got Ken Paxton last week, who in the face of a potential Trump endorsement of Cornyn, saying that he would drop out if Cornyn would work to make sure, like if this SAVE Act gets through and it gets voted on and it gets to the president's desk, fine, I'm out. Now, part of the problem is the way that he wants to go about it is wrong. And John Cornyn is suddenly signaling, this is an important thing. Yeah, I'll support it. And even though he is part of the problem, his approach that he claims he will take in order to get it done is actually the correct one. And so it's this real messy mixed bag of problems. And this, and now Trump, what a thing that's going on here. It is a real mess, but I think that the real underlying signal here that is probably going to get missed is Cornyn is a representation of the establishment party. And we're seeing what's going to happen to Republicans once Trump is gone. And even though he still exists, the midterms, again, I think his influence in midterm elections are not nearly as significant as many people do. I think that his ultimate influence is when he's actually on the ballot, and so Trump voters get out to vote, and since they're there anyhow, they go ahead and vote for Republicans down ticket from Donald Trump. But when he's not on the ballot, they don't have any interest in going out and voting in these elections because they don't feel that the Republican Party is a representation of Donald Trump, is an extension of Donald Trump. They're just part of the problem. So some on that Texas poll coming up, latest developments with Iran. Yesterday, it's pretty amusing to watch the freak out when it came to gas prices and oil prices skyrocketing and the articles that were just frantically being printed about, oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. I'm telling you, this is just the beginning of it. And by the end of the day, all of the prices just came tumbling down dramatically. And this is just the way of the world today. Issues, repercussions of international conflicts that once upon a time would last weeks or months, last days or hours now. This is just the way that it is. Yet when it's an opportunity for the media to portray the negatives of a Trump administration decision, then they're going to jump all over it as if this is it. Here we are. We told you so. And so despite the fact that there is the knowledge that these things do sometimes correct themselves before the end of the day, the media does everything they can to utilize the negativity in order to try to sway public opinion. In this case, against the efforts of so many in the Arab world, specifically, of course, Israel and then the United States here, to liberate the people of Iran and denuclearize the psychopaths that want to and have actively been killing Americans and want to wipe us off the map along with Israel. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 81. Tonight, a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a low around 53. For your Wednesday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with temperatures falling to around 52 by 5 p.m. And for Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 60.
Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, all of your home buying, your home selling needs. Maybe you got to do both at the same time. Perhaps you want, here's the thing too. You think, well, yes, I hear Emily talk and I know she's totally awesome. I've read the reviews and I see some of the postings she makes of these totally awesome finds. But you know, I'm a guy that I'm looking to buy about 1,200 acres and I'm wanting to do I'm going to do alpacas. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start an alpaca farm. And I don't really know if she's well-versed in that area because I don't see her doing a lot of postings in that arena. Well, she is. But here's the thing. She has her husband, Will, and that's his area of full expertise. So you're covered no matter where it is. If you found a cave for sale you wanted to live in, I imagine one of the two of them is going to be able to get you into it better than anyone else is. So across the spectrum, wherever it is in the area you want to live, whether that is out in the middle of nowhere down a dirt, windy road with all sorts of acreage, or the white picket fence in the cute little neighborhood, you are covered with Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Is that one home still the one she posted last week?
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to look.
Yeah, that was a remarkable home.
It really was.
All right, so there's this new poll out. Texas has really been, I think, a sign of the problem with the Republican Party. And the signals were very early on, well before the primary, in which you had Ken Paxton, which he is accused of having, he's Attorney General of Texas, of having all sorts of ethical baggage and marital problems and so forth. And these things are true, yet out of the gate, he already was proving to be, according to polling, a formidable challenger to Cornyn, who is the storied senator from Texas that should have a 90% support rate from Republicans. And as Republicans began to worry about the midterms, just because of the historical component to it, but for a number of other reasons, the economy a legitimate one, it just was not a good sign. And I'm telling you, this is the relationship going back to the pre-Trump era between the Republican Party and the voters, and why Trump got elected is because Republican voters are tired of these people. And the fact that in the primary in Texas, Cornyn could not get a majority of the vote, thereby resulting in a runoff coming up in May against Ken Paxton, who does have all sorts of, ethical accusations against him. And again, I haven't followed it well enough. I mean, people who like Paxton say, well, he's just being attacked like Trump was by establishment people, because he is not part of the establishment, while people who don't like him, of course, claim that he is just some sort of unethical train wreck. Don't know the answer to that. Don't know. But what I do know is the more that the establishment convinces people that Paxton is a train wreck, and the fact that he is still, according to the latest polling, up 8 points over John Cornyn, that should tell you something. So this is the TPOR poll, and it shows 49% of support for Paxton, 41% for Cornyn. As soon as the election was, or the primary was over, not really over, but the initial vote, and of course there's got to be a runoff because neither of those two got a majority of the vote, Trump signaled a potential endorsement and noted that, hey, whenever I make an endorsement, the other guy should drop out. He didn't say for whom the endorsement would be. Speculation, it would be Cornyn, because Cornyn was the incumbent, and conventional wisdom stipulates that the incumbent in a general election is obviously going to have a much easier time, traditionally speaking, than somebody that is a newcomer. The power of the incumbency. Part of the motivation, you may wonder, why would there, why not just hash it out and let the winner be the winner? And much of it has to do with money. And the more money that gets poured into this primary, that's less money for the general election. And so the play here, the idea here, is that the more money that gets spent in the primary, less for the general election, which means that the Republicans on a national level might have to take a lot of money and pour it into Texas because they might be very fearful Tallarico would have a chance, and just the one to lose that seat anyhow in the Senate would be a major deal. But the symbolism of Texas, a deep red, Texas, Florida, and Texas, one of the U.S. Senate seats going to a Democrat, just the morale of the Democrat Party and the fundraising that would come off of it would be a very big victory. And so in an effort to prevent that, then the national Republicans would take a lot of dollars and funnel it there, which means that those would be dollars perhaps needed in other close races that would not. So it's all about draining resources from the perspective of the Democrats. So if the idea here is, if, let's say, Paxton were to drop out and then Cornyn didn't have a primary these next few weeks, there wouldn't have to be spent tens or hundreds of millions of dollars that could be spent down the road or more wisely strategically used. The decision as to whether or not Paxton should drop out and what Trump should do in terms of endorsement has gotten a bit more difficult, because this isn't an even race, or it's not the other way around. If this were John Cornyn 49% and Paxton at 41%, then it would be pretty easy then for Trump to come out and make the endorsement, because it seemed as if, look, clearly Cornyn is the favorite here, and it's, we just need that final little push over the edge, and, it's just so close. But because it's the other way around, I think there's some serious questions here as to whether or not a Trump endorsement can even make a difference. I'm not a believer that Trump endorsements have as much influence as a lot of people believe that they do. I also think that Trump voters are savvy enough to recognize that An endorsement of Cornyn by Donald Trump, should it come to that, would be strategic, not because Trump actually felt that between the two candidates, Cornyn was the more MAGA, the more Trump-like individual, but because he had a better chance of winning and keeping the seat. And that is not so much of an interest to Trump voters. You couple that with the fact that Ken Paxton, whether he has earned it or it is unfair, continues to get hit with accusations that are kind of in line with what Donald Trump's been hit with. You know, allegations of illegalities, unethical, marriage issues. And so he continues to get attacked by the establishment for that, and that's echoes of Donald Trump. So it makes Paxton have that Trump-like aura to him in the sense that he is clearly feared by the establishment, just like Donald Trump was, hence the reason for all of these accusations. Now comes into play the Save America Act, and that component of it I want to talk about because Ken Paxton, he's trying to leverage all of this, or he was a couple of weeks ago, into getting that done. And it's a pretty smart move because he knows that Trump wants that done as well. And Paxton has said, I'll drop out of this thing if that gets done. Clearly, it is making somewhat of a difference because Cornyn has signaled suddenly, as if he didn't realize that that was an issue, okay, yeah, I'll support this. The problem is, well, I say it's a problem because Cornyn is overall part of the problem, but his approach is the proper one, while Ken Paxton's approach is the wrong one. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. I received an inquiry. Actually, it was over the weekend. Didn't get a chance to respond until yesterday from someone that had reached out to Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor about a pretty extensive, as they described it, project. And so Daniel came and went over everything, and they reached out to me because they knew of my experience, and just asked, okay, your thought, here's what we're thinking about doing. Just want to get your honest thoughts. And so it was Monday before I was able to respond, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I cannot recommend highly enough. And I was tried to call and leave a voicemail so I could get a little more extensive into it, but his voicemail was full. And so I just overall was like, and I meant this, I was like, I wish every home improvement industry, every single one of them had a Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. I mean, some industries do, obviously, and but they're just absolute premium, top notch. And I said, if you feel free to call, if you want to have any specific questions. And I got a respond yesterday via text saying, I've already spoken with a number of other people who have utilized Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, and they're all just overwhelmingly glowing. And that's telling. I mean, when people spend a significant amount of money in an investment in their home, generally people are very, very happy or very, very unhappy. It's one of the two, because it is a lot of money, and you don't want to spend a lot of money on something that turns out to be an eyesore. Or even if you're kind of sort of happy with it, the fact that you spend a lot of money only to be kind of sort of happy, and the fact that consistently you get the overwhelmingly glowing endorsements out of everyday folks for Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor says a lot about them. It's why I recommend them as well. HunterHardscapes.com, also under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 81. Tonight a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a low around 53. For your Wednesday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with temperatures falling to around 52 by 5 p.m. And for Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 60.
Latest polling in Texas shows that primary race between the incumbent Cornyn and challenger Paxton has Paxton up by 8 points. Then you had Trump come out immediately after the need for a runoff became evident because neither of the two in the primary got a majority of the vote. He said, well, I'm going to endorse one of them, the other one should drop out. It was presumed he would pick Cornyn because Cornyn, being the incumbent, was thought to be the individual that would be the stronger candidate. However, when you are polling 8 points up over the incumbent, that hardly is something that would encourage Paxton to drop out. That being said, Paxton said, hey, if Cornyn gets this SAVE Act through, I'll drop out. Suddenly, Cornyn seems interested in it. The Gateway Pundit has a story. While Senator John Cornyn is trying to move closer to President Trump and the MAGA movement as the Texas GOP Senate runoff gets underway, his opponent is not letting him off the hook so easily. As the Gateway Pundit readers know, Cornyn surprisingly finished slightly ahead of Texas Attorney General and MAGA favorite Paxton in the initial vote Tuesday, with Hunt, the other Republican candidate, far behind. That has led to the runoff. Trump, of course, saying, again, I'll be making my endorsement soon and will be asking the candidate that I don't endorse to immediately drop out of the race. No endorsement has yet come. Cornyn is doing everything possible to get in Trump's good graces after seeing a Fox News report claiming he was opposed to using the talking filibuster, a.k.a. the actual legitimate filibuster, to get the SAVE Act across the finish line. Cornyn took to X to claim it's all fake news and officially endorsed the talking filibuster for the first time. Quote, contrary to fake news in the Twitterverse, which technically doesn't exist any longer, I have supported the Save America Act from day one. I will happily support the talking filibuster if that's what it takes to pass this into law. This is a welcome and sudden change, as Cornyn did indeed express skepticism in an interview with NBC News last month about whether using the talking filibuster to pass the SAVE Act was a wise choice, saying, my understanding is it would require 51 votes to table amendments. So, number one, you need 51 senators on the floor, and you need all of them willing to vote to the tabled amendment. That's obviously can be problematic from a number of different standpoints. One, you might not be able to defeat them. And secondly, this process could go on for literally weeks, if not months, and still not be successful. So it's the standard Republican Party establishment position. It's just too hard. You got to understand why we can't do it even though we're in charge. Don't forget, make sure we stay in charge so we can get things done. But once we're in there, we're going to explain to you why we can't do it. Paxton responded by saying, quote, or posting, I made Cornyn more conservative in the last 3 days than he's been in the last 24 years. Yet flip-flop Cornyn's still too cowardly to support abolishing the filibuster to get it done and to call out his best friend McConnell for opposing the bill. The president deserves better. Now, the problem with this is Paxton's approach of eliminating the filibuster, because that is not needed. It is not necessary. The filibuster has not been actually used. It's been used with a wink and a nod, but not actually used. And I know most of you are firmly aware of this, but the actual filibuster, which in Missouri and Jeff City is required, in which you just get up and you talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and you keep going until the supporters of the bill say, all right, we can't take this any longer. We have other stuff that needs to get done, so we're just brushing this thing to the side. We cry, uncle, you win. The lazy way, which has been done for some time now, is the side says, okay, we're going to filibuster. And then the people in charge are like, we don't want to go through all that. All right, we'll just go ahead and not vote on this. We'll just assume we'll do it kind of in our minds as virtual filibuster. Okay, you win. It's all over. Okay. You don't need to get rid of that. You just need to have the actual filibuster. I know it's harder, but that is the answer to this. So ironically, when it comes to this particular situation where overall the need for the SAVE Act is clear, and Paxton is on the right side of this, and clearly Cornyn is only trying to save his own hide, Cornyn's approach, or at least what he pretends to be his approach, is the correct one, while Paxton's is the incorrect one. Now, this poll here with Paxton up by 8 over Cornyn is going to be very interesting to see what sort of implications it has, and if Trump is going to sort of pull back in terms of the endorsement, or Trump could utilize this as even greater leverage, telling Cornyn, listen, you really are in trouble here. And Paxton has said he will drop out if we make this thing happen. So you better giddy up on this. The other obstacle, however, is, of course, the fact that Cornyn is not really in charge. Right now, Senate Majority Leader John Thune is. Now, John Thune is going so far as to most recently claiming that all of this concern that voters have about the need to secure our elections by way of the SAVE Act is nothing but an echo chamber. It's all fake news. It's not real. It's all made up. It's much ado about nothing. He's taking the position that Democrats took prior to the most recent presidential election when it came to the border, when it came to crime, when it came to the economy, that these are all just Republican talking points, that none of this is actually real. But there's a Washington Examiner piece on this, and I want to share exactly what Thune is saying on this. And then also, I'm getting a little tired of Republicans in the Senate, in my opinion, hiding behind the leadership blocking this stuff from occurring. They'll come back to their home states, and they'll go to the events, or they'll go on, well, ours tend to only go on national talk shows. They don't really do local stuff. But, they'll talk about the need for this, yet they don't put pressure on the leadership. And it's becoming increasingly apparent that they don't really have much of an interest in doing this either, or at least not enough to really put pressure on leadership to make it happen, but instead just comfortably hide under the leadership blocking it while going back comfortably to their home states and talking about, yeah, we really need it, but what are you going to do? I want a great homeloan.com, all of your home loan needs, sometimes complicated ones. Maybe you need a second opinion. Maybe you are feeling just a little bit ghosted by your traditional lender, the folks you've been going through. You feel like anytime you have a question, you got to get on. You call an 800 number, 888 number, and then, the first thing you hear is an automated voice that tells you, please listen carefully, as some of our options may have changed since the last time you call. And then, and then it's some foreign language also, and so then you got to wait. And then, if you'd like to hear this, press 1. If you like, and then, please enter your number, and it's 12 numbers long, and you accidentally misnumber, and so, you got to start over. And then when you finally do reach someone, you're kind of like, is this AI? And if it's not, it's somebody you've never talked to before. Maybe you're able to understand them. There's a lot of components involved in that. You know what happens when it comes to iwantagreathomeloan.com? You can go to that site in the upper left-hand corner. There's Alex Carricker's cell phone number. There's Anthony Carricker's cell phone number. You can call them up 7 days a week. And if they're, in church or doing something with the kids or whatever, and so they're on another call, they'll get back with you. It's a world of difference. For all of those attentive, customer service, local focused needs, home loans, refinancing, reverse mortgages, iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. Senate Majority Leader, Republican John Thune, downplaying the conservative backlash he's facing over the Save America Act, chalking it up to, quote, paid influencer ecosystem that is amplifying calls for its passage. So in other words, if you are really concerned about this, you are just being played, that you are in this fanciful world in which people care about this stuff, but this is just a paid influencer ecosystem, like the world of the Kardashians or the Paris Hiltons, and you are not to be paid attention to, according to the leader of the Republican Party in the U.S. Senate. Thune cast fresh doubts yesterday that the Senate had the votes to pass the GOP voting bill, as conservative pundits and a chorus of social media personalities have been demanding for more than a month. And it's a majority of Americans, including Democrats. The Washington Examiner and others conflate the louder voices in this, which are conservative voices. But this isn't a conservative issue. This is an issue that, when polled consistently across the board, bipartisanship, Republican, Democrat, right, left, middle, independent, up, down, blue, gray, everywhere across the board supports this. The pressure campaign has moved several Senate Republicans to support the bill, even if it means burning weeks of floor time under a talking filibuster. Yet Thune told reporters there was enough resistance to that approach that he cannot guarantee an outcome, even as he promises to hold a Senate vote. Well, aren't you an effective leader? What sort of leader are you? If every member of the body in the Senate represents people in which a majority of them support this, even the most liberal, when you look at the numbers, even the Bernie Sanders, 73, 70+%, depending on the poll, of Democrats support this. If, as the Senate Majority Leader, you have 100 voting participants, and every one of them, a majority of their own party's voters, support this legislation, and you can't make that happen, you're not a very good leader. You're not a very good anything. Thune said, having studied it, researched it pretty thoroughly, you have to show me how in the end it prevails and succeeds. Loser, 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 loser. This is what Republican voters, I know I say this over and over again, are really sick and tired of. It's the losers in the party that just, well, we can't figure out a way to do it. If someone can show me how, I'd be more than willing to. What a loser. John Thune, you are a loser. If you can't handle this, get out of the way and let someone who can handle the most easy. I mean, this is a give me. This is you could walk through this thing blind if you wanted to. I don't know what the deal is with this guy. Unfortunately, when there is something that is so overwhelmingly supported by Americans, it is such a no-brainer. And aside from that, desperately needed. Desperately needed. We're talking about the fundamentals of our elections and the security of our elections, even if it were wildly unpopular. It would be something one should support and push through. But you have something that is definitely needed and something that is wildly supported. When you are the one blocking it and preventing going through the actions that are necessary in order for it to happen, even though, well, it might take weeks. Oh, well, goodness gracious. Poor you. People began to really try and fill in the holes and figure out what's really going on here. Are there bribes being paid? Is there somebody holding something over him? And while there is absolutely no evidence of that, a move such as this leaves people trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And I'll say this. U.S. senators that are Republicans need to start standing up and really calling this stuff out. Now, you have a few. You got the Rick Scotts, Ron Johnsons. But people like Josh Hawley and Eric Schmidt, they all need to start putting the pressure publicly on Thune. They need to make this happen. I have absolutely no doubt. If the other Republicans in the Senate really, truly wanted this to happen, they could put the pressure on it. But I'm getting a little tired of, and I would include our senators in this, that will go on television and they'll talk about the need for it. But then when it comes to doing the maybe the uncomfortable stuff and really putting the pressure publicly on Thune, we don't really get a sense that that's occurring. And you think about the things that these folks do focus on, that they do demonstrate a passion for, and oftentimes it is relevant stuff. But for Pete's sakes, we're talking about the security of our elections here. You can't make this a priority of passion? Springfield's Talk 104.1, the Pyramid Roofing Company, text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Springfield Livestock Marketing Center. It's the second Tuesday of the month, which means today is Dairy Sale Day at Springfield Livestock. That sale will start at 10 a.m. But if you are looking for something a little more unique, a little more fun to add to your farm, they will also host a bison and Brahman sale this Saturday. Now, the bison sale, it will start at 10 a.m. and the Brahman sale will start around 2 p.m. So you get two great sales in one day. And Springfield Livestock, they always offer online bidding for all of their sales. So if you would prefer to do that instead, make sure that you are all set before that sale on Saturday. You do have to register for that. To check out all of their upcoming sales, check out their Facebook page or their website, springfieldlivestock.com. And of course, you can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Greene County Sheriff Jim Arnott nominated by the president to serve as a U.S. Marshal, according to a news release. 37 plus years Arnott has occupied that position. He said that he will continue to hold the position until he gets affirmed by the Senate. And this will be an opportunity for Greene County to get a new sheriff. Now, in the interim, before an election, I believe the county commission will pick someone. Now, of course, they deserve an opportunity to prove themselves here. I'm always a bit weary of people in government picking somebody else in government, particularly someone that is supposed to be a representation of the people. Not that, that's the way the process goes. This is how it's done. This is done in this way so that there isn't a gap in having that position filled. So I understand that is part of the process, but I do think that when you're not choosing an elected person, it definitely deserves a real watchful eye. Because oftentimes, even if well-intended, people in government priorities are different than the average citizen. And so, but a subsequent election will come, and then the people will decide whether or not to affirm that decision by the county or to reject it. But all in all, a new sheriff will be coming for Greene County. Springfield's Talk 1041, Hour 2. Welcome to the show. We are on YouTube. You can watch the show in addition to listening to it. Springfield's Talk 1041. That's what you search up there. If you'd like to go to Lunch Bunch with us, our good friends at Godfather's Pizza, specifically the Springfield location, though they have the same owner, the area locations, Battlefield, Ozark, Nixa, and Springfield. The Springfield location is the one that we have Lunch Bunch at with a winner every Wednesday, and up to 5 of the winners choosing friends, family members. It's all-you-can-eat buffet and salad bar as well. If you want to go, just get registered over at KSGF.com. And if you're chosen, we'll reach out to you and set up a time and a date. And then we'll have lunch together, watch each other eat food. It will be quite enjoyable, I'm sure. It always is. Godfather's Pizza, KSGF.com. Uber has launched a feature. This was launched yesterday, that allows both women riders and drivers across the U.S. to be matched with other women for trips, expanding a pilot program aimed at addressing concerns about the safety of its ride-hailing platform. Now, much of this and the fears regarding it come because of a great number of sexual assaults that have occurred. Traditionally, of course, a male sexually assaulting a female while engaged in utilizing Uber. And it isn't just Uber, it's Lyft as well. And they have, this is, an area of criticism that, of course, they face. They get accused of not doing enough to make sure sexual predators aren't driving their vehicles. And so they've over time coordinated together. Anytime Lyft, for example, might have some sort of accusation or, determine that one of their drivers is inappropriate in that manner, they work with Uber and vice versa to pretty much share those names so that they can diminish the likelihood that that individual is going to be in a position of driving a vehicle and making a victim of somebody, in all likelihood a woman, again in the future. In fact, it was in February that a federal jury found Uber to be legally responsible for a 2023 case of sexual assault, and the company was ordered to pay $8.5 million to an Arizona woman who said she was raped by one of the drivers. Now, over time, the sexual assault reports have decreased. According to reports from Uber, there were 5,981 incidents of sexual assault reported in U.S. rides between 2017 and 2018 compared to 2,717 between 21 and 22, which is the latest year with data available, which the platform says represents 0.001% of total trips nationwide. I think what Uber and Lyft should do is just use the same tactic that Democrats use when it comes to an illegal immigrant raping or murdering somebody, going, oh, well, they could have been raped and murdered by somebody who wasn't illegal. That's what Uber and Lyft should simply use as a tactic. Be like, well, I mean, there's a good chance they could have been raped or murdered by someone who wasn't driving an Uber, so we don't really need to worry about it. But they have decided instead to try and just make it safer, among other things, allowing women who are, and see, as a man, I can admit this, men, when it comes to a sexual assault situation, in all likelihood, it is a man who is going to sexually assault a woman. Doesn't always work that way, but that's traditionally how it is. I am mature and intellectual enough to recognize that, as opposed to claiming that it is discrimination or it is misogynistic to always look at a man when there is an accusation of sexual assault, because the numbers bear that out. As you may imagine, this already is facing some challenges. There is a an ongoing class action lawsuit against this very policy out in California. And it was filed by Uber drivers who argue that it's discriminatory against men. And there's two different angles to this. One, they say that it reinforces the stereotype that men are more likely to be sexual offenders. Well, the fact of the matter is it's true. I mean, it's not I guess it is a stereotype, but it's true. This is a policy that is a reaction to the true reality of what goes on when it comes to sexual assault. The second argument they make, which is it's true, is this creates an uneven application of work opportunities. So what they're saying is that here you have, because only about 1/5 of Uber drivers are women, and that by allowing people to choose only women, then that allows the women driver to have access to a pool of potential customers that men don't have. And so you have the smallest portion of drivers having access to a larger grouping, essentially anyone and everyone they want, while men that make up 80% of Uber drivers are told, well, you can't have these potential customers because they only want women. Now, much of all of this confusion and messiness gets solved if you respect a fully free market system in which you have a you have a company that is run by private citizens, and they get to make up their own rules. And if people don't like it, then don't work there. Unfortunately, what has happened over the generations is people get in government and they decide that government should at times dictate what businesses can and cannot do in order to be, quote, more fair. How much businesses pay people, whether or not businesses have to offer certain benefits, whether or not businesses have to hire certain types of people or not hire certain other types of people. And suddenly what occurs is you get all of these great conflicts. So, for example, government holds a corporation like Uber accountable by way of the laws and a jury trial because of a man that sexually assaults a female passenger. And so then, in response to it, because of that government action, the company says we're going to take steps to remedy that by allowing women to choose only other women to be their drivers, which greatly diminishes the likelihood that they will be victims of sexual assault. So we are going to offer that as an improved safety feature. And then now you have government, because government's in the business of saying you can't discriminate, that is going to be deciding whether or not they can do that because we don't have a true free market system and lawsuits are at play here. And so everybody runs to the government to tell the private business, the private industry, what they can or cannot do. What isn't addressed in this story is what happens if this is all about safety and all about making a woman feel more comfortable by allowing her to choose a female driver, is when a woman reports feeling uncomfortable because her female driver is actually a male. Because you know that's going to happen with these policies, that you are going to have a woman that says, I want a female driver, and you're going to have some trans driver, some guy that maybe puts on lipstick and a wig, otherwise is fully masculine, and then the woman gets this male driver and says, I wanted a female driver, and how dare you commit that hate crime against me? And all of a sudden, this policy that is meant to protect women is probably going to end up with some sort of lawsuit against the woman, because she argues, hey, this is an actual guy, not a woman. It is just a matter of time that will occur. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 81. Tonight a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a low around 53. For your Wednesday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with temperatures falling to around 52 by 5 p.m. And for Thursday, sunny with a high near 60.
%52 of U.S. likely voters support Trump's decision to strike Iran. According to a new poll, 68% of Republicans say the U.S. military operation against Iran or Iran should last at least a few more weeks. An opinion 32% of Democrats agree with, and 50% of voters not affiliated with either major party. A majority of American voters support the decision to order the military strikes, this according to a new Rasmussen report. 52% of likely U.S. voters approve of Trump's decision, including 35% who strongly approve, 42% disapprove of the attack, including 30% who strongly disapprove. Now, wars are popular when you win them. And so much of the judgment as to whether it was the right thing or wrong thing to do is dependent on that. If it turns out to be wildly successful in the end, it will be viewed as, great and wonderful, and Democrats will deny that they ever pitched a fit about it and were opposed to it. If it doesn't turn out well, then you'll see even some Republicans who have been supportive of it quietly quit being supportive of it, and even down the road may, if the issue comes up, suggest that they weren't necessarily on board for it. This is what leaders have to deal with. The one thing that this poll does show is that when Democrats are out there arguing that the vast majority of Americans are opposed to this, that is not true. This has been one of the talking points that many of the Democrats have utilized, that the vast majority of Americans are opposed to this. Well, that's just flat out not true. Not only is the vast majority of Americans not opposed to it, there isn't even a slim majority opposed to it. The majority of people, though it's not vast, but a majority nonetheless, is supportive of this. Right now, could change. As I mentioned, 3 months from now, could go down, or it could be in the 60s or 70s. After the Gulf War with Herbert Walker Bush, I want to say his popularity, it was like in the 80s. He because it just went off so well. I mean, and we weren't a war-fatigued country. So many people were, Vietnam had happened far enough back in the distance that you had a real significant portion of Americans, particularly younger Americans, that really didn't live through any of that. And so the combination of not having lived through a drawn-out war and then the coverage was more on top of it than previous wars, and then it just went really, really well. Just went really well, and people really liked that. And in fact, not to get too far off the beaten path, but it's just sort of interesting. Bill Clinton arguably became president because of it. And this was because you've got the Ross Perot wild card in there. But when it came time for Democrats to decide whether or not they were going to run for president, all of the relevant Democrats that had name recognition and that were viewed as potential future presidents they chose not to run because they believe there's no way George Herbert Walker Bush could be beat because he's so popular right now. And so you ended up with a whole slate of a bunch of nobodies. In fact, I recall a sketch on Saturday Night Live playing off the fact that the Democrats' field of presidential candidates, it was just a hodgepodge of these people that no one had ever heard of other than their local constituents. And it was a joke. It was a thing that was mocked. Well, a couple of things happened. Americans came off of that high, and George Herbert Walker Bush, his whole read my lips, no new taxes, and then he compromised with Democrats to make a deal and raise taxes, and then Democrats use that against him because, establishment Republicans are so brilliant. And Clinton ended up, the whole everything, he ended up getting the nomination and would become president of the United States. It was this vacuum had been created because Bush was just so popular, no relevant Democrat wanted to run against him. And he was popular because the war went well. All of this leading into it, and the Democrats insistent of already calling this a loss. I'm sorry, I don't care whether you think this is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, but literally rooting against us, getting almost excited at the idea that we might lose this thing and just pouncing and focusing on the negative. I mean, some of these people might as well be propaganda wing of the Iranian regime. When it comes down to it, Democrats claim that a vast majority of Americans are opposed to this. That's just not true. I also like how they're calling it a forever war. It's been, 2 weeks? Is this another word we're going to have to deal with redefining in this country, as Democrats love to redefine every term to mean the opposite of what it actually means. And so we're already declaring it a forever war given, a week? and a half into it. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Regarding Uber rolling out this new option for female passengers to choose a female driver, this is being done all as a safety improvement, given that there have been some sexual assaults and rapes by men drivers against women, and in fact, a jury award of millions of dollars because of one of those cases. And there's already lawsuits out in California regarding this policy. But one of the text messages in the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line saying people actually choose a female driver. Well, yes, I suppose it's a different type of danger. If you just want to increase the likelihood you'll get into an accident, then you pick a female driver, I guess. Is that fair to say?
Stop it.
One of the best jokes I ever heard, and I'm not going to say who told me this joke, and the punchline is probably going to be obvious given the context I'm telling the joke in, but the joke was, do you know why Helen Keller was such a bad driver? And the answer, because she was a woman. I thought that was very clever because, of course, Helen Keller's blind, but woman being the overriding factor there in terms of driving and danger. Now, that being said, if you have a man driver, you could argue that you're more likely to get lost and have the driver not ask for direction. So I think that's fair, stereotype to some degree. Oh, I'll figure it out. Though men increasingly, with the usage of apps and the phone just essentially telling you where to go, we don't have to really suffer that stereotype that we did once upon a time when we did refuse to stop and ask directions, because we don't have to. We have that right in our hands.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 81. Tonight a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a low around 53. For your Wednesday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm and temperatures falling to around 52 by 5 p.m. And for Thursday, sunny with a high near 60.
Two stories here. CNBC yesterday. Quote, sky is the limit. Analysts warn oil prices could surge further. And then NBC News, just later in the day, oil prices fall and stocks rise in dramatic reversal. Took less than a day. Listen, my approach on this is different. And I am really, let's say the gas prices themselves and this spike, I think people's concerns over it is, it's a little disproportionate to what we're dealing with here. I had to fill up my truck yesterday. It's got a good sized gas tank on it. Yeah, I mean, it was more than usual. I didn't like it. But I really don't see this as anywhere close to long term. For a number of different reasons. One of which is just because increasingly these conflicts that flare up, though this one is more dramatic in the Middle East, have less of a long-term impact when it comes to gas prices. This is just something that has been occurring over time. I mean, we're a far cry from the days of rationing gas and seeing the doubling or tripling of gas prices. I don't know if it's ever been that extreme necessarily, but and so this spike, I'm not really worried about it long term, and especially what I don't accept is the inevitability of it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and there's no end in sight. That isn't to say that there aren't circumstances in which that could occur. I do get a bit concerned when people who recognize that the media is simply a propaganda outlet that is anti-Trump begins to react the way the media wants you to with some of their stories. And when they write these panic stories and experts say it's just going to keep going up and up and up and there's no end in sight and it's going to get higher. You think it's bad now? You think you hate it now? You just wait. And then react as if that is a completely objective perspective on things when you know the source. And while, again, I don't dismiss the notion that bad things could happen and that this could result in potential long-term problems at the pump for the average person, I just don't default to that. I default to recent history in which these fluctuations are not nearly as drastic and extreme as they are, and I default to some degree when it comes to Trump and his handling of these things, and whether it was his first term or second term, dealing with foreign adversaries and or economic issues. I mean, I can't even think of the number of times all of the experts said one thing, Trump said the other, and Trump was the one who turned out right. I remember, as many of you probably do, not long after he got elected, and I guess it was tariff talks or tariff moves or whatever, and remember the stock market, oh my gosh. I mean, it was tanking and everyone's retirements were just gone, wiped out. And we talked about this, and there were a number of people that weren't anti-Trump at all that were texting in with concerns, which are understandable. People saying, man, I mean, I just look, half my retirement's gone in just a matter of days. And it was, what, a week or two? If 2 weeks, it seems like it was just a matter of days. But it may have been a bit longer than that when all of those losses were made up and then we surpassed them. But the mantra at the time was all of the experts, all of the experts, all of the experts. Oh, this is going to destroy the economy. The stock market's going to tank. People are going to lose their retirements. And much like the gas prices yesterday, you had this flash of losses that were snapshotted into the expert storyline telling us that this was going to be long-lived and this was the Trump future, only to find out that the next picture taken was back to normal. And, we saw that with the gas price story yesterday and the oil prices, and not that they've gotten back to where they were prior to, but this massive, up to $120 a barrel and then dropping below 100 before the end of the day. It's just I don't subscribe to this idea of listening to the experts when it comes to this stuff any longer. And so I honestly don't I genuinely don't worry about it. Instinctually, I'm not worried. I do find it somewhat humorous when Democrats, particularly Gavin Newsom, had sent out some idiotic tweet about the gas price. Oh, yeah, you're really making things more affordable. And I'm thinking to myself, Donald Trump launches a war against Iran, Middle East. Massive. And as a result, we see gas prices go up, but they still don't get anywhere near the levels they are in a state like California because of the damage that Democrats have done there. I mean, and in fact, there was a response to Gavin Newsom's tweet at the time from it was some oil industry. I don't know if it was a company or a conglomeration or some sort of grouping of oil experts, but they were noting, you idiot, gas prices have been high forever in California because of your policies and policies of your Democratic predecessors. Are you kidding me? I mean, you have the oil industry fleeing California because of how impossible your policies are making it, which causes a massive spike in prices at the pump. And you're really honestly going to point to Donald Trump and note the increase in gas prices due to this, which pales in comparison. I mean, look at it. If you think about it in this context, how much look at what we're paying usually. I swear, Republic, I was beginning to think, was the home of the $2.30 per gallon gas price because it never seemed to budge off of that for a period of time. And so we've gotten up to under 3. What is it, still 5 in California? That's like normal pricing, or 7 or 8 it got up in California because of Democrat policies? And you think about what would normally, talking about a war in the Middle East, the toppling of a regime, of an oil nation, of an oil region of the world, and still that manages to have less of a negative impact for gas at the pump than Democrat policies have out in California. When you look at the realities of the context there, it's a pretty remarkable and stark comparison. Now, in the 30 minutes that the price of a barrel was over $100, Chuck Schumer was out there calling on Trump to hit those strategic reserves, which arguably, if what occurred yesterday were long-term, or it does get back to that, this is when you do start looking at, is that a proper usage of the strategic oil reserves? In contrast to Joe Biden using it during the run-up to the midterm elections, because gas prices were high and it was a concern for people, so he drained them in order to politically help the Democrats. And then, incidentally, when Donald Trump, when a gallon or a barrel was $29, And Trump saw that as a good time to take advantage of those low prices to refill the strategic reserves. Guess who was first in line to say no, because that's a gift to the oil industry? It was Chuck Schumer. I don't think these Democrats in this day and age are capable of taking a stance on anything that they haven't taken the opposing stance within recent history. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. We have a chance to reach a high in the lower 80s today, which means it's an AC day, especially for me. If you flip on that switch and you hear loud pops, bangs, or uneven cooling throughout your home, or you flip on that switch and nothing happens, don't fret, don't stress. Just reach out to Russell and his team over at Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Now, the Foreman team, they offer residential and commercial HVAC services. They also offer a 24/7 emergency service line in case something pops up after those normal business hours. If you experience any AC issues today, just reach out to Russell and schedule your appointment. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Pyramid Roofing Company text line, two things. I'm not understanding gas prices. One, the hypocrisy of the Dems that don't mind and want higher prices when they are running things. I mean, Barack Obama famously said, yes, energy prices will necessarily skyrocket. This was part of their effort to get Americans to stop using it. I mean, they openly acknowledged it, but it's typical, like everything with the left. There's no anchored belief system. There's no principles other than how will this help me when it comes to my desire for power? So when gas prices are high and they're making them high, that's a good thing because they're doing it for positive reasons, to help the environment, to get you off of energy. These are all noble causes. Now, if gas prices go up because of something that is an action of the current administration, like an attack on Iran, you would think, well, won't the results be the same? Less people using it, right? I mean, this is their argument. No, though. Because, again, they're not principled people. Oh, they see those gas prices being high as something they can use against Trump. So suddenly they're against it, and they tell you how bad it is. So when you pay more at the pump than you might otherwise pay, if they are responsible for it, you should be grateful for it. It is a good thing. If it is someone else, then it is a bad thing. The second point in the text saying the seasonal gas price hike that usually comes around this time while the refineries switch to their summer blend. And this is true as well. This is the summer blend. This is the whole ethanol deal, and it's supposed to help the environment, which it really doesn't do anything. But it is more expensive, and because the process to create it at the refineries is more expensive, and generally March and April are the months in which the refineries begin the production. May is when the actual switchover is officially legally required by gas stations, but this is that time of year. And then you add the increase in travel because of vacation, and so you have a supply and demand component in there. So naturally, outside of what is going on with Iran, there would normally be an increase in price anyhow. There's been an interesting offshoot of this war with Iran, and it involves the Iranian women's soccer team, and they have been down in Australia rather, because the Women's Asian Cup is in Australia for whatever reason. And the women lost. In addition to that, their first game, which was after the strikes were launched against Iran and their national anthem was playing, they did not sing along, which they normally do. And this was viewed as sort of a message that, hey, we're not with our government. That national anthem is the national anthem of the government, and that's not, this is a message that the Iranian people have desperately been trying to get the world to recognize, is that an attack on the Iranian government is saving us. They are our enemy. We are not them, they are not us. Attacking them is liberating us. And so it was viewed as the Iranian women reflecting that by, as citizens, not singing the Iranian national anthem. It did not go unnoticed. In fact, on Iranian TV, one of the commentators really ripped them for it and openly talked about, of course, it's Iran, that they should, once they return home, be subject to some of the most fierce punishments available, which for a woman in particular is not that great. It was after that they began singing the national anthem at subsequent games. And while some people might look at that as them backing down, what you have to remember is a lot of them have families back at home. And tyrannical regimes, well, this is what China does oftentimes. Well, just any tyrannical regime. If there are members of their community, of their country that are overseas, they will utilize the threat of harming their families back at home in order to get them to act on behalf of their country. And so there began to be a call to not send these women back to Iran, to essentially save them. And initially, the Australian government was sort of like, well, nothing we can really do. We got to treat them just like everyone else. To which the response was, but they're not like everyone else. They are assuredly going to be tortured, raped, made an example of, and if they're lucky, murdered when they return to their homeland. So maybe they ought to be given asylum. Trump weighed in publicly calling on Australia to do just that, and so far it seems to have created some positive momentum. Fox News reporting that 5 of the women's soccer players have received asylum in Australia after Trump put pressure on the Australians. For those of you, again, that say Trump is horrible for women, this is, I suppose, one of those examples. Australia granted asylum to 5 members of the Iranian women's soccer team yesterday following their perceived political stand during the Women's Asian Cup and pressure from President Donald Trump. Australia's Home Affairs Minister, Tony Burke, made the announcement the women were transported from their hotel in Gold Coast, Australia, to a safe location by federal police officers in the country in the early hours of Tuesday morning. You know what Trump should do? Is have them to the White House. It would serve a couple of purposes, and it would be so interesting to see how the media would cover it when the female American soccer team for the Olympics chose to not go to the White House, and the message, though it was somewhat presented as subtle, was that, Trump's misogynistic and he made that joke about women. And then, we just have it so rough as women already in this country. And then for Trump to have to the White House women who really actually know what suppression is. I think it would also be a good lesson for people in this country. These women, like that gal at the women's show I was talking about yesterday, going on about, well, women just have it so horrible under Donald Trump, and I mean, oh, he's just awful for women. I'm like, do you have any clue what women go through in other parts of this world? Are you kidding me? Do you know what a woman in Iran would go through if they said that these sorts of things you're saying about Donald Trump about the leadership in Iran? If Trump could give them asylum here to the U.S., or at the very least have them at the White House to talk to the world about what women go through in Iran? The 5 players met with Burke and began the process for the humanitarian visas, he said. Burke saying, quote, I say to the other members of the team, the same opportunity is there. Australia has taken the Iranian women's soccer team into our hearts. And of course, again, it shouldn't go unnoticed that they had indicated they were not going to, quote, treat the Iranians different than anyone else until Trump stepped in and put public pressure on them. At the time, Iran was appearing to not have any plans to help these Iranian women. Trump had posted, quote, Australia is making a terrible humanitarian mistake by allowing the Iran national women's soccer team to be forced back to Iran, where they will most likely be killed. Don't do it, Mr. Prime Minister. Give asylum. The U.S. will take them if you won't, Trump wrote on Truth Social. Trump added later, I just spoke with Prime Minister of Australia concerning the Iranian national women's soccer team. Trump went on to say he's on it. 5 have already been taken care of, and the rest are on their way. Some, however, feel they must go back because they're worried about the safety of their families, including threats to those family members if they don't return. In any event, the Prime Minister is doing a very good job having to do with this rather delicate situation. God bless Australia. And that is a real legitimate concern, and I can't imagine what a horrific position to be in which you have family back there, and you know what because they face potential death and torture already because they have publicly been rebuked by the Iranians in government and through government-run television there because they disrespected the regime by not singing along to their national anthem. It was very clear the message they were sending. But if they don't go back, then they fear for their families, their mothers, their fathers, their children, their husbands, their brothers, their sisters. And so it's a horrific situation to be in. But I do think this would be a fantastic opportunity for Trump to have these individuals to the White House, because there is there's a massive gap of knowledge and recognition that people, particularly liberal women, have in this country about what oppression really is. And this is a message I've long had for people who, the audacity that particularly liberal women have in this country to go on and on about being oppressed, clearly demonstrating they have no knowledge of what oppression really is. Zero knowledge. And that they should really, really educate themselves. Because it is an embarrassment and an affront to humanity to declare what they're going through as some sort of violation of their human rights as a female when you have what women are going through in countries like Iran happening in this world today. And I think it'd be a great opportunity for Americans across the board to hear from some of those very women. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Airport nightmares over TSA lines have returned. Some airports are telling people that you need to arrive as much as 5 hours early because the Democrats continue to refuse to fund TSA. And this is causing a bit of a problem. I saw Hakeem Jeffries, which I still think is hilarious, is oftentimes called the dollar store Obama. I don't know why I find that so funny. And he was posting a picture of some Republicans out golfing, and it's like, how the TSA continues to go unfunded while Republicans are gone. You guys are the ones that are blocking the funding. I mean, this is Groundhog Day all over again, in which the people who are responsible for blocking the funding are criticizing the people who are trying to get the funding through. Hour 3 straight ahead. I'm Nick Reed. Ozarks elder law. I've talked before about avoiding situations in which you may unknowingly cause yourself to not have access to Medicaid and Medicare for things like nursing homes, for example. Or I've talked before about how a lot of times people at the family farm, they're told, well, you have to sell it off because you're too rich to qualify for Medicare. And how it is Ozark elder law can make sure that you get access to those benefits. And some people, and this is noble thinking, they'll say, well, kind of sounds like, hey, if somebody can pay for it, shouldn't they? Why should the government do it? Why should the taxpayers do it? But here's another way to look at it. If you own a family farm, if you own your own home, odds are it's because you have worked your entire life and you have paid more taxes than are morally acceptable. And if you own your own property, you have had to pay the government in order to, quote, own your own property year after year after year after year. And so while some may look at it as, having the taxpayers pay for something that one can pay for themselves when it comes to Medicare, others could look at it and say, getting back just a small portion of what the government has taken from me. And I think that is a very fair assessment for hardworking people that own land, particularly generationally farms, and just the hand over fist, take that government takes, and the relative little, if any, that the average person who is giving and producing things in this country actually gets back. When it comes to an opportunity to get even a fraction of that back when it comes to nursing homes or assisted living, I'm all for it. And that's what Ozarks Elder Law can help make sure, if it is at all possible, that they get you in that position so you don't miss out on that opportunity. Plus so much more. Ozarks Elder Law, find out what you need to do. The consultation doesn't cost you a thing. It's so much more than nursing homes and land and so forth. But I can almost guarantee you, odds are there are things you don't even need, or you don't even know you need to have taken care of legally. So consultations free, 10 area locations, ozarkselderlaw.com. The increased nightmare that people are dealing with, the TSA, and the fact that Democrats continue to, of all the things to not to block funding for, when we are dealing with a heightened sense of potential terrorist attacks and security, that this is what Democrats are choosing as their hill to die on, our national security. It's almost as if they want us to be vulnerable and attacked so that they can in turn blame Donald Trump. And while I don't necessarily believe there's evidence to indicate that is their overriding desire here, I certainly believe at least some of them would find that to be bonus points. That if the lack of security that is the result of a lack of funding because of Democrats' refusal to fund this portion of the government, led to somebody slipping through the cracks and carrying out some sort of terrorist attack, don't think that Democrats wouldn't be very joyful at the ability to claim it was Donald Trump's fault because he launched a war against Iran. That's how their minds think. Now, when it comes to TSA and the lines, and some airports are saying you need to get there 5 hours early. It made me remember a time in which Democrats had absolutely no ability whatsoever to cut off funding to airport security. And that was before 9/11. When government didn't have anything to do with it whatsoever. airports manage their own security. But after 9/11, collectively, it was decided that government could do a better job than private industry could when it comes to security, and so they took it all over. While some people might point to positives on that, I think it's fair to say one of the negatives is then it gives the ability of people in politics to cause these sorts of problems that once upon a time they had no ability to cause these sorts of problems because they weren't responsible for funding it. In fact, and I'm sure there's reasons for this, and I'm sure it has to do with unions and everything else under the sun, but ideally what could occur, though I'm sure there's something that prevents it from happening, but ideally airports would remedy this by just starting their own private security and saying, you know what, we've actually done this before. It's been 25 years, but once upon a time, we actually just took care of this stuff ourselves. And so we'll, in the meantime, go ahead and supplement the problems that are occurring with doing it privately. And who knows, maybe even just sort of over time shift to that, go back to the way that it was before. Now, that'll never happen because we've become accustomed to government running these things. And even though government running it is proving to be so much more disruptive than it was when it was done by the airports themselves, we won't go back because this is how the human mind works. Oftentimes, emotionally, we get attached to the way things are done, and it scares us. Well, if government isn't doing it, oh, these horrible things could happen. I mean, it's just awful. I mean, what? We can't do that. We have to have government in charge. Well, okay, and this is part of what you get with that. Government giveth, government can take away.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 81. Tonight, a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a low around 53. For Wednesday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with temperatures falling to around 52 by 5 p.m. And for Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 60.
There is some polling that was done that is somewhat humorous, and I think NBC News commissioned this. And they just did a lot of breakdown stuff and gauged people's feelings, positive feelings, negative feelings on a whole number of different things, and some of which I don't know why I find this interesting. So they throw in there a whole bunch of people that are top of mind and issues, from AI to the Republican Party, Marco Rubio, Ocasio-Cortez, and then Pope Leo the 14th is thrown in there. And not that he's not relevant, but if I just don't know, like, what does one who isn't Catholic for the most part have to go off of, whether he's you know what I mean? It's sort of like, well, I don't know, I'm not Catholic. You're asking me to gauge a guy that's not really in my world. It just seems like most of these other people have, to a degree, an impact or are more relevant, I guess. I've just always thought it's because I would imagine, if you're not Catholic, most people, if you were to ask them, hey, do you know the Pope's name? They probably wouldn't even be able to tell you. And so I just find it interesting. Now, that being said, the Pope always has a very high positive, and I think some of that's just because, again, if you ask a person who has no idea who the Pope is, but they're like, oh, the Pope, he's a good guy, so by default, by reputation, the Pope gets a pretty high, and it did give, according to this polling, 42% positive. While that may not seem high, only 8 was negative, and then the rest don't really have an opinion. So there was a pretty significant number of those. But of the names and different issues, that did hold the highest positive. But here's what I thought was funny, is ICE has a more total positive view from the Americans polled than Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Ocasio-Cortez, than the Democrat Party. And not that necessarily in the polling, I mean, most of the Republicans did gauge higher, and they're kind of around there in the same arena as ICE. But for the Democrats, who have done everything they can in order to portray Trump as Hitler and ICE as Nazis, the fact that people still in this country view ICE, the so-called Nazis, more favorable than the people who claim they're going to save us from the Nazis. So the total positive for ICE is 38%. Gavin Newsom was 27%. Kamala Harris, 34%. Donald Trump, 41%, so he's got a higher approval rating. But all the Democrat Party, 30%. Let's see here. Ocasio-Cortez, 31%. And it's a little fun and a little humorous that, because, they have the entire media apparatus on their side. They have popular culture on their side. They have celebrities that every opportunity they get, a microphone in front of their face, talk about how horrible ICE is, or they yell F ICE. I mean, it's just this non-stop bombardment of total and complete propaganda on their behalf, doing everything they can to paint ICE as being completely negative. Yet when the American people are gauged, they have a higher positive rating than any of those Democrats do, including the entire Democrat Party. So they're obviously doing something wrong. Speaking of, have you probably not been in tune with this Amelia deal over there in the UK? I'm going to talk about this more in depth one day. I was not familiar with it until happy hour, and one of our friends over there, John, was telling me, he had mentioned it, and he goes, you haven't heard of Amelia? And I was like, I don't think so. Now, I realized after he sent me a video on it, I had seen some AI-generated videos surrounding this character, but I did not know the context of it. And so the context is, I don't have it, actually, maybe I do have it in front of me. Let me see here. No, I don't think I do. So I may get some of the details a little hazy here because, again, I don't have it right in front of me. But essentially, what occurred was you had the Home Office of the UK, the government, craft this sort of video game that was used to train young people in particular on essentially how to be compliant with government. And so what they did is they created this character called, I think it's Amelia. Yeah, Amelia, I believe is how it's spelled. And sort of this punk cartoon character, a rabble rouser. She's got purple hair and she's overly pro-British. She's sort of, what they did is they kind of created what would be a British MAGA version, if you will. Very pro-Britain, and this is our culture, and people who come here, if they come here because they want to be British, they should be British, and just the problematic nature of someone like that, sort of like the deep state considers Trump supporters in America. And so what this character Amelia, her role in this video game was one in which students would be asked scenarios like, how would you deal with Amelia, when she's doing this or that? And it's essentially, the purpose was to train young people how to deal with these nationalistic right-wingers. And in fact, apparently, when students didn't answer correctly, oftentimes the government would visit the families in order, sort of like their version of Division of Family Services, in order to look in on them and to see how they're being raised because they didn't know the proper answers, right? Okay, so what the British government did not expect is that this Amelia character would be embraced by the very people it was trying to characterize as dangerous, and not just by those people, but a lot of other people say, wait, we're supposed to believe this is bad? This is some chick who's really proud of being British, or, she's like proud of being from the UK. She's proud of our heritage. She's proud of her culture. And she has this expectation that if other people come here from other cultures by choice, then they should, if they're coming here for us, then they should at the very least accept and not try to change our culture. And she turned into this iconic figure of the very people that the government is trying to demonize. And she's become wildly popular, so much so, in fact, that the British government shut down the whole video game thing because they realized it completely backfired. And they're panicking. And there have been some articles here in the States regarding this whole thing. And what they've done is, in their panic over in the UK, they've really tried to characterize this in the headlines as the extreme right have hijacked this character. But what many have noted is that this wasn't a hijacking. This is highlighting and emphasizing the characteristics of this character that you put upon her. It's just you see him as bad, we see him as good. And so she's becoming this symbol of national pride and cultural pride for people in the UK that are tired of being told, particularly as white British people, you have to be ashamed of yourself. And they're tired of seeing Sharia law. I mean, if you want to talk about some of the specific instances they're dealing with, Sharia law inching its way into their culture. And, they've had the huge rape scandal that was finally acknowledged by the British government, that the government had been covering up thousands of rapes of underage girls by Muslim men because they didn't want to offend the Muslim population. And this is something that a lot of people are just, frankly, getting very, very tired of. And they're tired of being told that they're bad people because they're British and because they're white and because they don't want to be subject to some sort of religious Sharia law. And because of that, through AI and merchandising, this Amelia character is really becoming this iconic figure. And I think it's just lovely how the whole purpose by the government was to instead train the good citizen on how to behave with this character that instead has been embraced by at least a significant portion of the British people. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. All right, where are we here? All right, well, let me throw a bonus at you before the traffic here. Report Epstein guard Googled him minutes before body found, received mystery $5,000 a week earlier. Officials reportedly said a prison guard in the unit where this is by way of a New York Post story. Officials reportedly said a prison guard in the unit where Jeffrey Epstein was being held searched his name on Google minutes before he was found dead. U.S. Department of Justice documents show the guard also made a $5,000 deposit just over a week before his death. The New York Post reported on Saturday, identifying the guard as Tova Noel. In August of 2019, Epstein, convicted pedophile, found dead inside his Manhattan jail cell, where reports said he hanged himself. Noel and another guard were accused of falsifying records to make it appear as though they had checked on Epstein during the night hours. Both guards lost their jobs, but the charges were eventually dropped. Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman said back in 2019 the guards had a duty to ensure the safety and security of federal inmates in their care. Instead, they repeatedly failed to conduct mandated checks on inmates and lied on official forms to hide their dereliction. Federal Bureau of Investigation records said Noel searched latest on Epstein in jail twice just minutes before correctional officer Michael Thomas found Epstein's body. She had earlier shopped online and allegedly napped instead of checking on the inmate every 30 minutes, while Thomas also perused the internet. Noel later denied searching Epstein on Google, saying she did not remember doing so, and also claiming the FBI records were not accurate. The Post article continued. Meanwhile, Chase Bank had flagged cash deposits in Noel's bank account in a suspicious activity report to the FBI in November of 2019. Another file from the DOJ revealed a total of 12 deposits beginning in April of 2018, the bank said, and culminated in the largest deposit of $5,000 on July 30th of 19, the records show. Epstein's lifeless body was found August 19th of 2019, which of course would be just a couple, 3 weeks after that final deposit was made. One inmate housed at the jail reportedly told the FBI he overheard guards discussing covering up Epstein's death when his body was found, according to the Miami Herald. The FBI reportedly interviewed the inmate, who recalled what allegedly happened on August 10th inside the special housing unit. Per the Miami Herald, quote, "Breathe, breathe," he recalled officers shouting about 6:30 a.m. Then he said he heard an officer say, "Dudes, you killed that dude." A female guard replied, "If he's dead, we're going to cover it up, and he's going to have an alibi, my officers." The FBI notes said. The inmate claimed the whole wing overheard the exchange. Later, after learning Epstein had died, he said inmates said Miss Noel killed Jeffrey. Epstein's cell was situated approximately 15 feet from the guard's desk. So that's some of the latest information on the death of Jeffrey Epstein.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 81. Tonight a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a low around 53. For your Wednesday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with temperatures falling to around 52 by 5 p.m. And for Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 60.
Oh, it's just been so entertaining to watch the evolving narrative regarding the terrorist attack by left-wing Islamic supporters on, right-wing white supremacists outside Gracie Mansion. Now, Gracie Mansion is where the real down-to-earth socialist Mamdani chose to live. He decided to move out of his apartment, and Gracie Mansion is a perk that you don't have to take. You don't have to accept as mayor of New York. It's just if you want to level up and live the opulent life of the wealthy, then you can do so. And I'm not even sure that the official vote count had been tallied before Mamdani started packing boxes to move into Gracie Mansion, though he did say he was going to upgrade it by putting bidets in it. It wasn't quite high class and wealthy enough for him, and so in true socialist fashion, decided to utilize other people's money in order to make it a little more opulent than it already was. This is standard for socialists. There was an event of some protesters outside of Gracie Mansion that were railing against illegal immigration. And I don't know this group. They're referred to as right-wingers, and just, the ultra right wing. And then there was some sort of scuffle. Apparently some devices were thrown. And at first this was portrayed as an attack by right-wingers. Mamdani himself cried Islamophobia after the Islamists tried to carry out the terrorist attack and failed. One of the videos that has emerged is just so perfect. It involves some left-wing nutjob, and he is using a megaphone to yell at the protesters about how everyone is welcome in New York City. Everyone that's in New York City deserves to be there. And while he is yelling this through a megaphone, one of the people that he's arguing on behalf of throws the IED into the crowd, attempting to kill all of the protesters. You couldn't have a more perfect illustration of the dangers of left-wing ideology. Now, much of the media, and of course, as I said, the narrative that they started off with was that these were right-wingers, these were Islamophobic individuals that were causing this potential disaster, when in fact it was the very people that the Islamophobists were warning and protesting against. The media, once it became clear, began downplaying the IEDs, referring to them. Just some of the headlines here. You've got one headline, Islamophobic demonstration outside Gracie Mansion leads to 6 arrests. 6 people arrested after smoke device thrown at anti-Muslim protests near Gracie Mansion. Again, no context as to actually who threw it, leaving the reader to infer it was the anti-Islamic people, as they describe them. Not to mention the fact that they referred to an IED as a smoke device. The Associated Press taking a similarly vague angle, headlining a piece about the attack. Police investigated after device thrown at anti-Islam protest in New York City. New York Times original headline, smoking jars of metal and fuses thrown at protests near mayor's house. So that's how they describe an IED, a smoking jar of metal and fuses. NBC in New York posted on X, multiple arrests made after suspicious devices found outside Gracie Mansion during an anti-Islam rally and counter-protest. And I mean, it goes on, just downplaying the devices. Well, these devices are referred to as Mother of Satan because of how deadly they are. And there were 2 of them that just happened by the grace of God to not go off. These are devices that have been used to kill hundreds upon hundreds of innocent people. They were used in the 2019 Sri Lanka Easter bombings, in which more than 250 people were killed in coordinated attacks. Back in 2017, it doesn't seem like it was this long ago, there was that Ariana Grande concert bombing in which 22 people were killed, including 10 people of the age of 20. It was this same device, sort of device. 2016 Brussels airport and train bombing, leaving 32 dead, 350 wounded, same type of bomb. The 2015 Paris terrorist attack, 130 people in 6 different locations throughout Paris were killed, same device used. 2005 London bombing, killing more than 50 people, wounding nearly 800, the same device was utilized, again, referred to as the Mother of Satan. So you have these devices that have been long used by Islamic terrorists to kill hundreds upon hundreds of people in terrorist attacks, most of which happen to have been in Europe, used against individuals that are trying to warn against the open border policies of welcoming people in who have been very outspoken about hating our country. And immediately our media and certain politicians, socialist Democrat politicians, run cover for the terrorists, downplaying what they were attempting to do, obscuring the truth through headlines to make it sound as if maybe it was the anti-immigrant people that were responsible for the bombs. The amount of aid and comfort that Democrats and the media give terrorists in this country is a remarkable thing. And, of course, it's always particularly perfect when it happens in New York City, in which 9/11 was the base for the primary attack on that day. This headline sums up the derangement of people on the left. USA Today, an opinion piece. Don't let Gracie Mansion bomb scare obscure far right's danger. So the headline here is saying, don't let the actual danger obscure what we tell you is the actual danger. Don't let the fact that these Islamic terrorists tossed some bombs into these people somehow obscure the fact that they're the actual dangerous ones. You know, the people who never do this stuff? Don't let the actions of the group of people who are consistently responsible for terrorism obscure from the fact that this group over here that never actually does this stuff, don't let any of that confuse you into thinking that the far right isn't dangerous. This is the world that the left has created, where the people who actually carry out the killings aren't the dangerous ones, but the people who have a different opinion that don't carry out these terrorist attacks. We're told by the left they're the ones that we're supposed to be afraid of, not the ones who may actually kill us, but the ones who say things that hurt our feelings. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company, we have more storms rolling through the KSGF listening area over the next couple of days. And I know I sound like a broken record, but if you experience any roof damage, don't go with a random door knocker. They will almost always tell you that you need a new roof, even if you don't, and then they will make you sign a contingency agreement. And once you sign that, it is nearly impossible to get out of. Don't get yourself stuck in that situation. Make sure that you hire a trusted roofing professional. And I highly recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. They offer emergency tarping services, free roof inspections, and they won't upsell or use scare tactics on you. So tonight or tomorrow, if you experience storm damage to your roof, reach out to the Pyramid team. You can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
I keep seeing the headlines, as many of you do as well. Mixed messages coming from the Trump administration on the war. Mixed messages. And a lot of Trump really should get all these people together and get on the same page. And some of it has to do with the insistence from the media. Well, when's this going to be over? And so you get a variation of answers. Well, when we decide it's over, to, when the people this, and hey, if it takes, Trump's like, we think this will be done in weeks. But at the same time, he wants the Iranian regime to know we're in this the long haul, so we'll stay with it as long as we have to. Well, now, wait a minute. You just said it was going to be a few weeks. And it's just, can we be adults with this thing? First off, it is war. And not to trivialize it, but if you think of it as like a game, and beforehand you're asking the quarterback or the coach, hey, what's the plan? And so they sort of we're going to really work on offense, and we're hoping in the first quarter we do this and that and so forth. But guess what? Things do as a game unfolds. It changes. Well, now, wait a minute. He threw a Hail Mary. When we asked what he was going to be doing, he never mentioned that. Well, yes, that's right. Not every single detail is provided. Sometimes because circumstances change as they unfold. I think most intelligent people would argue that is what you want, those sort of people in charge, as opposed to someone that's like, nope, we have to stick with the plan no matter what. When it comes to a war, that you adapt based off the circumstances in order to better answer to the circumstances. I'm not saying that, there needs to be some free pass and that we don't have any expectation of getting any sort of direction or answers from the person in charge. But I think we do, as intelligent adults, also need to have a little responsibility as citizens as to understand that there are, this is a war, and that there's going to be a lot of adapting, and there will be things that occur that may not have been recognized, and that even the whenever these different events, wars or otherwise, get planned out, there's generally all these different, scenarios because of, this could happen and that could happen. And oftentimes, there are things that occur that were never thought of. And I think that we need to just be realistic about that and understand it. And I understand some people say, oh, so you're just saying just trust them. I'm not saying this is where you got to use your mind and be an adult. And different people are going to come to different conclusions. But this nitpicking of every little thing. Well, now, wait a minute here. They said they didn't want a regime change, but they're talking about a regime change. Listen, here, let's just be straight up honest about this situation. The ultimate goal is for Iran not to be a threat to the United States of America, not to be a threat, not to be disruptive, it's just for the way Iran is today to not be that way any longer. Now, if that was something that was possible without a regime change, okay, fine. We all know that's not realistic. And so if a regime change is something that is necessary, which I think we all agree is the case by everyone's admission, in order to have an Iran that is no longer the threat that it is, then so be it. But it's not for the sake of a regime change. This isn't regime change just to do it because we didn't like them. It was because of the direction of the country. And so if that necessitates regime change, then so be it, which of course it does. Now, I think that's a reasonable thing to understand. And I also understand why the Trump administration has been very careful to not call it a regime change, because we know what the media would do with that. The problem that the Trump administration is dealing with is they don't just have Iran as an enemy, but here domestically, in terms of the narrative of the war, he has to deal with the enemy of the media and the enemy of the Democrat Party, looking at everything that he says, or Marco Rubio says, or Pete Hegseth says, or anyone says that they know the media is going to pounce on and hyper-focus on and use it to say, oh, wait, but wait, over here you said this, and wait a minute, over here, you guys have no idea what you're doing. Oh, my gosh, this thing it's total chaos. Oh, there's disagreements in the White House. And so, in addition to dealing with the actual enemy of Iran, with messaging, with propaganda, yes, the media and the Democrat Party is an enemy of the effort. Now, of course, they're going to say that they're not, and maybe they don't see themselves that way. But an objective observer recognizes that this media and Democrats jump on anything and everything they can in order to make it a negative what we're doing. And so, as human beings, as American citizens who want to know the truth, I think we just have to understand and recognize all of this, and recognize that while, yes, we do want to know, and I mean, frankly, I don't really have a problem with the messaging. I understand what's going on. And part of it's because I just, as a thinking human being, see what is happening, and I know what the long-term plan is based off this administration. It's just to have an Iran that isn't the Iran that we have had to deal with for decades, of killing Americans, of funding terrorism, of developing nuclear weapons, of threatening to use those nuclear weapons to take out Israel and the United States. An Iran, that isn't actively recruiting and trying to get people to kill our president of the United States. And yeah, that probably means regime change, but that's why, not just for the sake of regime change, not because, hey, let's build some nations, but because it has been determined, whether you agree with it or not, that this is a severe problem for the world and the United States national security. And so the decision was, we have to do what's necessary to make it not be a problem like that any longer. Doesn't mean there won't be mistakes. Doesn't mean that the way of going about it's going to be perfect. But I think that if we take the position of nitpicking every little thing that's said, and that we're doing ourselves a disservice. That's just my take on it.